Okay, welcome everyone to my continuation of what are my favorite theorems, my very biased collection, of course. Today, Kazhdan-Lusztig combinatorics, or I will abbreviate it to KL combinatorics because I just can't spell Kazhdan-Lusztig, or of course I can't pronounce it, of course, so it's just KL. And it's kind of a very, very nice combinatorics where we'll see non-negative numbers turning up. Very surprisingly, there will be some very surprising patterns. And well, whenever you see non-negative numbers, you should think, ooh, we are counting something. I'm going into some details at the end of the video, but non-negative numbers, so integers, positive integers means we are counting something. Well, 5 counts 5 apples or 5 whatevers. We'll see actually what those Kazhdan-Lusztig combinatorics counts, and it's kind of very amazing. So I'm going to show you those patterns and how they work, how those polynomials patterns, depends a bit what you want to call it, how this works, how you would compute them. And it's really mysterious, so I encourage you to do it yourself. In the end, you get a really mysterious result, which is very deep theorem in mathematics that is actually true. So it's not easy at all to prove it. And as I said, the proof, or as I tried to indicate, the proof in the end is accounting, is realizing the nice combinatorics in terms of something bigger, such that in this bigger thing, you actually count, and the Kazhdan-Lusztig combinatoric will come up as a counting in this bigger universe or bigger object, whatever. We'll get some details. So this is quite a deep topic in representation theory and geometry. It's very modern. So dates back to 79 when Kazhdan-Lusztig introduced this combinatorics. And as I said, it's really mysterious if you just see it out of the blue. And I'm trying to explain it out of the blue because I can't compress all the really deep mathematics behind it, where it came from, in a reasonable video of about 15 minutes in length. I just can't do that. Sorry. But I stole my slides, of course, or idea for the slides from a very nice talk Jody Williamson gave, linked in the description, where you can find more details and also a lot more examples, which you can redo yourself. It's really, really fun. We'll see. But let me just jump right into it. And I need one black box. So I need you to believe me that there is a nice object called the Coxeter complex. And roughly speaking, a Coxeter complex is one of those guys here. They might make sense. They exist in higher dimensions as well. But basically, let's focus on dimension 2 here. And what I will have is something that's made out of triangles. I have a triangle with a blue edge, a red edge, and a black edge. So there will be those triangles, and they are glued together in some nice way. So the next triangle will be, again, something like this. And the next triangle will be then something like this, something along those lines. This was a really bad triangle. Let me give it another try. So here you go. So, whatever, something like this. I will go through some examples. Something like this. Here are no colors. Here's a triangulation. So the 3 pictures I'm showing you here is a spherical picture. So would be a triangulation, certain triangulation of the sphere. This is a Euclidean picture, which, as you can see, is a triangulation of the plane. And this is a hyperbolic picture, which, if you've seen this before, is a triangulation of hyperbolic space. Kind of funny geometry. But what I'm trying to say here is the Coxeter complex is a really general notion. Basically, there's one associated to every reasonable graph, to every simple graph. So every graph, G gives you a simple graph, G gives you one of those Coxeter complex. They might be very high dimensional or whatever, but they're roughly made out of those triangles or higher versions of triangles. And there are really quite a few. Here's a funny one. Also hyperbolic, and apparently you can buy those t-shirts with hyperbolic Coxeter complexes on them. Fine. Anyway, so I think mostly stay with the first example and the second example. But as I said, you can do this way more general. Just take it as a black box. There is something called a Coxeter complex. It has this nice local combinatorial picture of having triangles everywhere and some more complex global behavior. Like here you have sphere, as I said. Here's more like a plane, and here's hyperbolic space. So they get very complicated globally, but locally they're pretty simple. They're just made out of triangles, colored triangles. And the idea of Kazhdan-Lusztig combinatorics, which is really mysterious if you don't know the background, so if you don't know where they come from, but let me just do it in this vacuum. So really just explain the combinatorics, and in the end then indicate a little bit where this all comes from. we want to do the following. We want to index for each alcove, and the alcoves in these pictures are just the connected components. Think of it like taking out the hyperplanes here, or those lines, take it out of the space, and all of these connected components here, this one, this one, this one, this one, and so on. This one, oops, this was really bad, give me another try, this one, and so on. They are called alcoves, okay? Alcoves, that's just the name. And what we want to do is, for every alcove, we want a kind of a leading alcove, and this I will run an animation later. So let's just stay with me for now. In this sense, the leading alcove is this one. It will have a 1. And the pattern associated to this alcove is everything you see down here. It's very, very sophisticated. They get very, very big, very, very fast. And that's what I call a pattern. And all of the alcoves in this pattern, so the pattern, the shape of the pattern, as well as the entries of the pattern, depend on my leading alcove. So here my leading alcove is on top. And all of these entries here, so here's a V cubed, for example, depend on the starting one, the starting alcove. And that's what I call a pattern. And within each of those alcoves, you see a polynomial in V inverse. Okay, that's what we want to do. Okay, sounds, why not? Why not? As you will see, they will count something important, or as I will try to indicate, they will count something important in geometry and representation theory mostly. But let's just do the combinatorics. Okay, so if you stay at this picture for a while and you really, well, let's say you believe me that this is a worthwhile goal, and maybe you would come up with the following rule. So the point is, everything here is locally nice and globally relatively complicated. So maybe what you should do is come up with some local rule, right? And here's the local rules. The whole Kazhdan-Lusztig combinatorics is determined only by 2 local rules. So it's actually not so bad. But I still encourage you to do it yourself because it's combinatorics. So you really need to get a hang of it by just doing it. I will show you an animation, as I said, in a second. Well, maybe not in a second, but in 1 minute or so. I really encourage you to do it yourself. And you can follow the talk of Johnny Williamson linked in the description. And the local rules are as follows. I only have 2, right? I have an up rule and I have a down rule. Up rule and down rule. And what do I mean by up rule and down rule? Well, let's say you have an origin somewhere fixed here. In those pictures, the origin is always here. So to the southwest. And, well, you have some already inductively given polynomial somewhere. And you want to move it across one of the next boundaries into the next alcove. You want to move it across, okay? And you're jumping up. So you're moving away from the origin, or you're jumping down. You're moving towards the origin. That's what I call the up and the down rule. You could call it away and towards if you want, but they usually call it up and down anyway. And there's 2 rules. It's very simple. So you move across. So you move your H to the new spot. That's what you always do. And you leave something behind. And the thing you leave behind depends on whether you go up or down. Okay, so you leave something behind, you leave a V behind, you leave a V inverse behind. Those are the 2 rules. And we need to see that in action. So for now, just that's what we have. You move up, you leave a V behind. You move down, you leave a V inverse behind. And that's why you need a V and a V inverse. They're just formal parameters that you use to distinguish whether you move away from the origin or towards the origin. Okay. Fair enough. That's basically it. That's a local Kazhdan-Lusztig rule. And then we just start going, and I will show you the animation in a second. So this is how it works. So here's one of those complexes. This is one of the Coxeter complexes. More precisely, this is a spherical projection of one of these guys here. Okay, so it's spherically projected to the plane. That makes it easier for me to draw. And here's my origin. Okay, here's my origin. And I have, as I said, everything is colored here. So there's a red, there's a blue, and there's a black color. And I start somewhere, just fix somewhere. So, okay, my starting pattern inductively is just this. Very simple, just a 1, just what it is. But initiation, I just start. And now I apply the Kazhdan-Lusztig rules. And the idea is to move the 1 around, because that should be the indexing of your pattern, right? So you move the 1 around. So what you would do here, the first thing you need to do is you need to move it across this wall. So the pattern you would get is a 1 and a V because you just moved across the wall, and the origin is you moved away from the origin. Okay, so you get a pattern with a 1 and a V here, which is the next pattern. And then you keep on going. So now you have a 1 and a V, and you can move the 1, for example, across the blue one, leaving again a 1 and a V. And at the same time, and this is where it gets then inductively grows as hell, which grows very, very fast, you need to move whatever entry you see here also across the blue wall. Right? So you have a lot of patterns. You have 3 walls. You now move across whatever blue, and you need to apply the blue rule to everything you see. So let me just run an animation for you, and hopefully it makes more sense. Okay, here's my animation, and we want to move the 1 around. Keep that in mind, and really maybe just do it yourself in this example. It's really easy in some sense, but maybe a little bit too fast. So let's see. So I want to move the 1 around. The first I do is I jump it across red. And that's the pattern I get. I jump it across red, I leave a V behind, right? That's the rule. I jump it across red, I leave the V behind. So let's keep on going. So now I jump it across black. So I jumped it across black. Same rule, but you also need to jump this one across black. So you jumped, let's see, this one across black. What happens? You get a V and you leave another V behind, so you get a V squared here, right? So you jump across and you get this pattern, and you keep on going. So you keep on jumping, let's say across this one, you do it to the whole pattern, and the pattern grows very, very fast, as I said, because you need to apply. So the jumping here was across blue, so you needed to apply to everything here in blue as well. Here, so you get a pattern here, here, and here. This jumps to here. That's what we should see. And it jumps, perfect. And then you keep on going. And you jump again. And you get a new pattern. And you jump again, or that's what you wanted, actually. And you could start with another one. So this is another start. So this would be one of those patterns. And then there's an extra rule, which I forgot to mention. Of course, I did forgot to mention it. We will see it in the next one. Namely, whenever you hit a smaller one, you need to subtract that lower pattern. So you kind of build inductively. You know what kind of pattern there is supposed to be, because you in order to get to this point, you needed to know kind of a certain path of patterns. And there's some funny magic going on. So let's try this one here. So new pattern, new start. So this already jumped from the start, and you keep on going. In this case, you go in this direction. Here's a 1 again. You jump. Now you jump again. Jump across. And here's something funny happens. You see a 1 here in this pattern, which you have visited before, and you will subtract the corresponding pattern. The corresponding pattern was 1 V, V squared, V. So let's check that. Let's here see when we hit this pattern. There you go. 1 V, V squared, V. You get the point? So we have seen this pattern before. So we have it on our list. And whenever we go up to infinity if you want, and whenever we see now a 1 turning up, subtract the corresponding pattern. Let's see what this means in a second. Subtract the corresponding pattern, and that's what you do. So this is then the pattern actually for the new alcove down here, right? And then you keep on going. Keep on going. You jump it across again, for example, to here. You get a really huge pattern, and you can jump it across once more. And here again, here you see a 1. So you should subtract the corresponding pattern. So here you see a 1. You should subtract the corresponding pattern. We have seen this pattern before. You subtract the corresponding pattern in this one as well. And you actually get the new pattern here, this one. Very beautiful. And in this case, you're done because you're at the outside of the picture. I hope that makes some sense. So let's run another one here. Let's look at it. So you jump, you keep on jumping, and you keep on jumping, and you keep on jumping. And just apply your rule all the time. At one point, we probably hit a 1 again somewhere. We are still good. It's still the same. No 1s had ever appeared, except the leading one, of course. There you go. There will be a 1. And then you subtract the corresponding pattern. So it's always subtract the pattern whenever you do 1, subtract the pattern, and so on. And you can keep on going here, and those patterns get pretty huge. All right, this is kind of weird. So there's a game you play on those Coxeter complexes, and they're very, very general. They're triangulations of spheres, for example, of planes, of hyperbolic spaces, very general. And in all those cases, there's a crucial rule to subtract older patterns. And if you, I'm just showing you very small examples, but if you do this in huge examples, you will subtract and subtract all the time. You subtract all the time. And still, here's the theorem for today, still there's this funny surprise that the patterns still always stay non-negative. So that you will only see natural numbers. And actually there's an even stronger statement. You won't even see negative powers. So let's have a look again at one of those animations. So here's one of the animations run to the very end, or almost to the very end. So here's the one. The pattern is huge, as you can see, and there are no negative signs, not a single negative sign in this pattern, although you went through many subtractions here, but still there are no negative signs in this pattern. That's very surprising. And all powers that you see are positive, which is also very surprising because your local rule tells you to put inverses like often, very, very often. So these are the two surprises in the Kazhdan-Lusztig combinatorics. And these polynomials are really, really hard to get in general. So there's a funny theorem, which is really powerful. It tells you that those patterns get arbitrarily complicated. Basically, any polynomial could appear in those alcoves. There are some symmetries that the polynomial needs to satisfy, kind of trivial symmetries if you want, like, well, maybe not trivial, like they need to have entries which are non-negative and with positive powers, but otherwise any polynomial can appear. So you can have really, really crazy coefficients in those polynomials, so really, really bad ones. So this is really delicate combinatorics, and there's no a priori reason why this should work. So if you do this on paper, this is very surprising. It just works, and it's just really amazing. So that's why I like it a lot. And the way you prove this is really beautiful, very modern mathematics. So the general Kazhdan-Lusztig positivity conjecture was open for years, roughly something like 30 years until it was proven, telling you that this is really not something easy. It's not something you write down on the back of an envelope. It's way more complicated, but the idea itself is not so bad. The idea itself actually originates somehow already in the Kazhdan-Lusztig paper, if you want. The idea is, well, if you see natural numbers, so let's ignore the positive powers, let's just focus on the natural numbers, on the missing minus signs. If you see those natural numbers, then usually you're counting something. And here's my baby example of that. So the binomial coefficient is actually, we all know that, or I guess, it's actually a natural number. But this is not quite obvious from the definition of the binomial coefficient if you see it, well, defined like this, right? You have n factorial divided by something, God knows what that is. And the way to prove that this is a natural number, well, it's a binomial, so there are 105 ways to prove that this is a natural number. But here's a really cute one, by just saying the binomials count something. And they count, in this case, as you can see here, those expansions of this binomial. It's just a binomial theorem. So they count just the expansion of the binomial coefficients. And this kind of, in nice diagrammatics or a nice graphical illustration, is just decomposing the square in some nice ways. And this is, I said again, that's kind of the point here, a very cute proof, in my opinion. So cute is, of course, just my opinion. A very, very cute proof that the binomials are natural numbers. They count something. That's kind of the idea of natural numbers. Natural numbers count. And you do kind of the same for Kazhdan-Lusztig polynomials, just what you count is much harder. So the kind of the point how this was proven after 30 years is you can kind of make sure that they count dimensions in a certain type of category, if you like that word, in a certain mathematical object. And if you count dimensions, well, it's dimensions, right? Dimensions are natural numbers. And that's how you prove this amazing theorem, the Kazhdan-Lusztig positivity, that whatever you do, no matter how complicated your Coxeter complex is, no matter how, you can do it on a hyperbolic plane, no matter what you do, patterns stay positive, which is really, or non-negative, which is really, really, really amazing. Okay, so let me summarize. I wasn't really able to explain where Kazhdan-Lusztig combinatorics comes from, There are some certain characters involved of certain nice representations of Verma modules, for example, a certain nice object in mathematics, and kind of they were designed originally to count those. And they came up then with this local construction, which works in way more generality. And then kind of what was missing is that people did those calculations a lot. So you can do them with a computer nowadays, of course. And what's kind of missing is what do they count? They are positives. They need to count something. And it took 30 years to figure out actually what they count. And this was a quite recent breakthrough in mathematics. So I said the KL paper was from 79, 30 years would be something like 2010. So it's not that old in the end. It took 30 years to prove it. Really, really beautiful piece of mathematics. But the Kazhdan-Lusztig combinatoric itself, you don't need to know that. You just kind of need to do it yourself. And it's really mysterious that it works, but it does, which is kind of the funny theorem here, or the nice theorem I wanted to tell you. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I also hope to see you next time.